Welcome to the Poultry Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Molnix, and today we're kicking off season 3 with an incredible guest. This is my first guest returning to the podcast. It's very rare that I get a chance to be interviewed by my wife. So what a better way to start season number 3. You guys, the listeners, getting to know a little bit more about me and what's kind of behind the scenes of the podcast a little bit. Maybe some of the best of what's been going on and also where we're heading in the future. So with that, I'd like to welcome my favorite guest of all time.
Oh, I'm your favorite guest of all time. That's so special. Thanks, Brandon. I'm happy to be here.
So Emily, last year you got to guest host and interview me. How has it changed your life to be a guest host on the Poultry Leadership Podcast?
It's a good question, Brandon. I don't know that it's actually changed my life all that much, but it was really fun. And I looked forward to being a host again. Kind of had to convince you to let me be the host for this episode of season 3. I'm really excited to have this job again. And I think it's going to be a fun one.
We got some good responses from our first interview. So let's kick this off. Emily, take over as host of the podcast.
I'm so excited to do that. So Brandon, over the last year, there's been a lot of things happening in our lives, and there's been a lot of work changes in my life and in yours. So those are really exciting. Do you want to talk about your work changes?
Well, my role really hasn't changed much. I'm still director at Prism Controls and still doing the podcast. But what's changed is the leadership around me. Over the last year, we've had a change from Bud Bentley moving over to Big Dutchman and Eric Hansen taking the... And I've learned a lot through that transition. As a person, as a team member, as just a human being, you know, I'm a person that usually likes change a lot. And in this particular case, it stretched me out a little bit.
I did notice that you had to think things through a little bit differently with the change in leadership, but I don't think it was a bad change. I think it was just a different change in you and how you had to process a few things just in a different manner. That way you could see things differently, to explain them differently to people who were seeing them differently. So I thought that was a really good change.
Well, you said it well, is just communication. I use the term managing up, but when you have a new boss or a new leader that you're working for, you have to quickly understand what they value, what is important to them, what their communication style is. And when you're on a leadership team and then you add another dynamic, it's even better because now you're trying to figure out what the new person on the team also has. And thankfully, you know, Eric and I have been on the leadership team for a long time. He's a great guy, but it definitely, it's taken some time, and I've really, I guess, enjoyed the process of getting to know, even though it was tough. I like tough things. And I think we're just coming up to a year and things are going pretty well.
It's been almost a year already.
There was a long transition period. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was a good transition. I can tell that the changes here and there, it's a different dynamic. Not that it was bad before, it's just different. So I think that's cool that you've worked through it, even though some days were a little bit harder than others.
Well, it's change that we just can't necessarily predict, or all of us go through it as leaders at some point in our career, whether we, you know, go into a new job or someone promotes from within. There's a period of time that you have to, one, mourn the change from your previous leader, and then 2, grow into this new relationship or new communication style of a new leader. And some leaders do better than others at it. I look back at the year and I hope I did pretty well.
I'm sure you have. I'm pretty sure you've proven that.
So, Emily, of course, you mentioned in your introduction of me that you've also had some changes. Tell the audience, what changes have you gone through this last year?
Well, thanks for asking, Brandon. I changed my role as a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I work at a level 1 trauma center here in the Grand Rapids area. And I changed from bedside nursing, a very, very busy bedside med-surg floor, to hospice nurse, which is really, I'm going to cry again. I didn't expect that. I feel as if everything in life has led me to this point, to where I can truly be empathetic and compassionate to the people who are making the most difficult choices to live out the rest of their days comfortably and to show them that we'll be there. They're not going to be alone, and we'll help their family process through all those choices that they're going to make and how they're going to live the rest of their life and in comfort, doing everything that they want to do, everything that's left on their bucket list. We're going to do our best to make sure that they can get there and do it and spend time with the people that they love.
And God's been preparing you for this. You have that soft voice, that kind heart. You use the word empathy, and just watching you use the talents that God gave you has been amazing. Leaving a very stressful floor where you seemed just not yourself, to you coming home and getting to share amazing wins, even on people's worst days, of how you were able to use the talents that God gave you. And that's amazing for anybody, but specifically when it's your wife, it's really, truly amazing, because that dynamic of not living out what your purpose is adds a sense of stress to those around you. But when you are living in that purpose, that stress turns to peace. And thankfully, this last year has been very peaceful as you've been able to transition into your new role and just see the joy that you have of going to work every day, and also the joy of when you still have that joy when you come home.
Yeah, it means a lot. It's definitely a position that I see so many blessings in and so much love. It doesn't matter the situation, doesn't matter the family dynamics, doesn't matter anything. Really, what everybody wants at the end of everything is more time. And it's absolutely beautiful what I get to be a part of. Thanks for asking. Moving on a little bit. Before we get into the poultry world, we have to talk a little bit about the Mulnick's world, because the past year has truly been a marathon for all of us. First, we hit a massive milestone this past September, and as you love to tell everyone in your now perfect dad joke, we've been married for a whole 50 years. You've been married to me for 25, and I've been married to you for 25. Go us! And somehow we still really like each other, right?
I assume so, yes. No, yes. we love each other in our own quirky little ways. And the fact that she pulled my dad joke out on me that she had to hear for years, when I would explain to people just how long we've been married. Because when people look at you and you say you've been married for 40 years, and I look at, my wife doesn't look at all like she's been married that long. It's just one of those things where you just got that dad joke, and she's had to put up with it. So she threw it back at me. Thanks, wife.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
It's been a great 50 years, old man.
Truly only 25.
During the last year, we've been living in a construction zone with pretty much half of our house under construction. It has been a test. And honestly, I'm glad we're still talking to each other. I've had fun doing this construction, although it has been somewhat challenging living in a small house with one bathroom that's under construction, followed by our bedroom that's under construction and everything in the way. It's been fun, right?
It's been a learning opportunity. And I say that because remodeling your home can be fun. But when you're a project manager and you do that for a living, it's your trade. And then you have to project manage when you get home, as well as meet other stakeholders' approvals on things. And it's so different in the world of home remodeling when somebody needs a full-blown prototype before the approval process happens.
I just have to see things. I can't envision them.
So that's included building a closet before it's approved, and then getting approval and making changes and putting up window trim just to get the approval before we go through the rest of the area with new trim. So little things like that have taught me to be a way better project manager, especially when the stakeholder sleeps next to you at night.
There are some days, though, that I do wish I didn't always have something to do staring at me from across the room, because there's always construction going on. But our weekends are definitely fun when we spend them doing other things besides construction.
Well, there's not a lot else to do when your kids grow up and move out. And
Don't talk about that. But while we've been busy fixing up this old house, our two children, Silas and Lily, have been busy growing up. Lily moved back closer to home and continues to work in the emergency room. She's back on the fire department as a firefighter, running emergency rescue calls. And in just a few days, she's finishing her EMT school, following both of us seemingly in the healthcare field. How do you feel about that?
I've tried. I failed. She is so much more like me than I could ever imagine. Getting her those first years of my 20s of just being on an ambulance and running after the next adrenaline dump and being there at everybody's worst day and just having this peace about you when chaos is around you is something that she's definitely been blessed with, because it still amazes me how she continues to go down that path and follow me in some areas, but also you in a lot of other areas, which is really inspiring to know.
I feel like she's like a good combination, the calm and the ability to handle chaos. I don't handle chaos too well, but you definitely did and do. And I'm just calm, and so's Lily. So I don't know. I think she's a great combination in this sense.
Yeah. Yes, she is.
It's definitely exciting to see and just sit back and watch and be there for her if she needs us for any hard calls or any hard things. But it's really fun to watch. So Silas is finishing high school and will no longer be governed by the school calendar. It feels like we're reaching the end of that era of our lives. So what would you say is our secret to staying sane in the middle of all this change? You know, with the change coming with Silas.
Well, being governed by a school calendar I'm so glad to be over that. We have one more season that I have yet to put in my calendar, and I probably should.
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah, because usually that requires me to put it in everybody's calendar.
Yes, it does.
Organized one. And then it's what do we do when we're home alone and we have to stare at each other? What are we going to do when the remodel's over? Because there's not much left of our house that we can remodel.
Well, I mean, there is, but I'm not ready for it. Let's finish this first parts first. But yeah.
Oh, come on. It took me 20 some years to put the first trim on the house.
It was 13 years.
13 years? Okay. It took me 13 years to put that trim in the living room that was missing from the day we moved in. So I've got 13 more years to go to finish this trim.
Please don't take that long. Oh my gosh, that'd be so hard. I guess those are goals we can do in the next, once we're finished, like that year, once school's done and we're not. It's going to be weird being an empty nest. I mean, I don't know if Silas is planning on moving out or anything, but it's coming. That's a whole new path that we've never walked before. How you feeling about that?
Well, as you know, I always have time or find ways to fill my time, whether that's work or working out or hanging out with friends, things like that. I think I'll find ways. Yeah. I mean, I volunteer at a lot of things and do things that, keep me busy. It's, it's finding times where our lives collide, me and you, because you're also pretty busy working, and our poor Lady Grace, our dog in the middle, who
separation anxiety,
who has to struggle with that. But I'm sure listeners that you have some great advice for me as to when your kids moved out. And so I'll be looking forward to that advice, and maybe I'll have to be, at a conference or a convention or something like that. Please stop me and give me some advice of what to do when your kids are moved out.
Yeah, that's a good thing there to ask for. What do you do? How do we do this part of our lives? We are new here. So moving on to the podcast world and the poultry world more. Last season, we talked about the vision. Now that we're in season 3, who are your dream big guests that are currently on your radar? The ones who would really move the needle for the poultry industry? Or who's on your vision board as like the big deal? You'd love to have them here.
Well, my favorite interviews are with the farmers. This season 2, was amazing. I look back at the amazing guests we had across the board, and the farm stories always top the charts. When you listen to legends of the industry.
Those are really good podcasts. I really liked them.
My word, you could just peel them back, and just sitting, I had the opportunity to travel and do some interviews this year, and just sitting in their office doing the interview, it was amazing. But I also learned a lot about the next generation. I mean, there were some days where I was just moved by 18-year-old, 19-year-old, young, talented adults as they pursue either something in agriculture or a future in poultry, and just the things that they're accomplishing so early in their life. I'm so moved by that. And what was really interesting was, I had also the blessing of interviewing some pretty big names, some dream names this last year as well. Like, I just remember interviewing Daniel Burris, and he still amazes me. And he's a connection from when I was back in the paramedic days and sharing my ideas on the interweb. And to have him on the podcast and just to share about vision and future and forecasting that was another good, amazing interview. And as I get into this next season, number one priority is I want to share more farm stories. I really want to hear how these farms came to where they are today, and what's going to take us to the future on these farms, because there's so many farms that have these generational stories that I just want to sit around and just listen to those and be able to bring those to the audience. And then, of course, there's a few future people out there that are just absolutely like, man, that would be really stinking fun to interview. And sometimes I just sit around and build that dream board and go, who would be that crazy guest? And it's hard to say, because, I mean, as I look at our guest, of course, I have to try to interview Jim Gaffigan, because he is my doppelganger. And so many people look at me and go, oh my gosh, you look just like Jim Gaffigan. And so that's one that I just reach out and say, you know what? That would be a extreme, but it would be fun. And then I also have one of my favorite actors of all time who I can quote so much, and that would be Rainn Wilson. And it's not because of his work he did on The Office, but actually his work he did on Code 3, which was an amazing recent movie. And so if you know how to get me connected to Rainn or Jim Gaffigan, please let me know. And then, of course, there's also a lot more legends to interview here in the industry.
That'd be really fun. All those. I mean, hearing more stories of farms. I don't know, those farmer stories, they just get me because there's so much history, and it's coming, it's been passed down from generation, and it continues to do that. And I think It's so cool to know that it's all come from, someone in the past and moved on down. And then, of course, the good heart-wrenching stories that you had on there. And it'd be fun, of course, to have you do your top big guys. Rainn Wilson, of course. The Office and Code 3, pretty much. That's pretty awesome. So, Brandon, I've heard you tell people several times, just Google Brandon Mulnix. It's kind of your thing. For listeners who haven't done it yet, what are they going to find when they Google Brandon Mulnix?
Well, listeners, as many of you know, had an interesting past where I've done a lot of different things. Some of you may know that I was a photographer. And so you might find some of my old photography that's still popping up. You might find some old articles that were written either with ideas that I had shared. But what it really is I did an interesting thing back in 2011 where I ran with my jaw wired shut.
It was 2011?
2011.
Wow.
And a local newspaper wrote an article about me, and it ended up being a viral article that I have seen all the way in Tokyo and China, and all of these news agencies around the world had picked up on this AP Press story. So when you see your name, man runs 50 miles with his jaw wired shut, on ESPN, Sports Illustrated, NBC, ABC,
in
CBS. Runner's World, which is one of those really interesting pieces of it. And I will go into that for just a second, because in high school, I had told my high school cross country coach, that one day I would make Runner's World.
You did?
I did.
Wow.
And I never imagined how, because I was not fast. I was not really doing amazing things. I just so happened to be, I'm going to say, stupid enough to run 50 miles with my jaw wired shut to raise food for a local organization, all because I was too cheap to not run the race. And I wanted to do something a little crazy.
Yeah, It was the crazy thing behind that. That's for sure.
And you'll find some other interesting things about me as I'm involved in a lot of things, but not too many people can Google their name and have to not compete. I believe I've only found one other Brandon Mulnix that comes up in the Google profile. And I believe it was a wrestler somewhere, but
you're so unique.
I am unique.
They say everyone has some sort of superpower. What do you think yours is? Or better yet, what do people say yours is? What is your superpower?
So many times the feedback has been that I can process things very, very quickly.
How would Dwight say that? I could process things 50 times faster than the normal human being or something like that.
Yes,
Sorry.
Probably something like that. But what's interesting is I can visualize process from start to finish and just start connecting the dots, and also just see things and ideas and things floating in the sky that I've had the doctors check and it's normal. But the idea is that's one of those superpowers I have, is vision. And it's been fun. It's always fun to have. And then the ability to connect with people. I love hearing people's stories. I love asking questions. I love just being able to understand what makes people tick, because it really has helped me better understand how to make products and services, and just, that. And I really have a lot of energy.
Yes, you do. I think one of your superpowers is being able to not just connect with people, but be able to answer their questions really well. Sometimes when I'm talking, I stumble over my words because I'm trying to go so fast. But I think you do a good job of articulating what the answer is you're coming up with, and having it be really clear, just like you just process it so fast and so well. So I think that's one of your superpowers too.
Thank
you know, when we were dating, you could answer any question and I would believe it completely 100%. And so that's, I mean, you are a little bit sarcastic that way too. So we've had moments in the past year where people have come up to you in public because they recognize you or they recognize your voice from the show. Does seeing the real life impact of your episodes change how you approach the mic or responsibility that you feel towards the poultry community?
Wow. Yes. When this podcast started, I never imagined how it would affect people. I don't always get to see it. I would love to see all the ways that the podcast has affected people, whether they've gotten more confidence from themselves, feel a little bit prouder of themselves for taking the risk and being on the show. But when I've seen people's really affected by the show, it's been in ways that I could never imagine, because it's people that, and I don't want to share their stories here. That's their stories, but it just gives me motivation to get back here on the mic. It gives me hope that we're going to continue to be able to do this for as long as it makes sense to do this, because God has used the podcast in some amazing ways for some people. And it's not me. It has very little to do with me. It has to do with the fact that I was following and being obedient to who I should have on the show and connecting with that person in a way to share their story and then to see what that story has led for them. And it has been absolutely incredible.
I think it's really cool that sometimes you go into a plan and you shortly thereafter realize the plan is not what you thought it was. It's way bigger than what you thought the podcast interview was going to be. And you've had some conversations both, you know, while recording and while the mics are off that have been pretty incredible. And to know that there's just such an impact that goes beyond, you know, some 45-minute recording that's much bigger than anything we could imagine, that there's all this happening, you know, that God has planned. And I think those are really cool stories that you come home and tell about. And, you know, I get to hear those fun stories when maybe everybody else doesn't, but, you know, hearing the podcasts that come out of those interviews that you're excited about. And I don't know, it's really cool to hear.
Yeah. Nothing says you're doing the right thing than a guest to walk across the room, give you a hug, and just tell you thank you. Yeah. And then continue to go in and share the story of just what it meant to them. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah. And all you're doing is just following, you know, God's lead and what questions you might want to ask, or who's going to be on your podcast, or who you want to reach out to, and just go from there. You just, you know, following his lead and seeing what's going to happen. And it's always bigger than we imagine. So.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the podcast has actually opened me up. I've been interviewed on a number of podcasts, and not that I've reached out and said, hey, can I be on your podcast? But it's, no, we see how you live out your faith on your podcast. Can we interview you on our podcast? And that's one of those testaments to what I'm doing, because also with the podcast, it holds me accountable. When I'm here and I'm sharing my faith and I'm sharing what I do and obedience, and then I go out and I have to live it at events. And that's where the power of the podcast has really been, and these conversations that you've been part of at different events and conferences. Well, people will come up and share, and they might not have been a guest, but they will share about something on the podcast that made a difference in their life. And just being faith forward has been opened up a lot of really good conversations that I probably would not have had in the industry. And plus it holds me accountable. Yeah. I can't be saying one thing on the podcast and then living it out any different. at an event.
What was the one question that was asked at that show? You were up on stage. What was the question? I know it was a big one.
You matter. It was at a UEP event, and we were asked to fill in the blanks. I matter because. And so with a room full of professionals and poultry people, I just said, I matter because I'm a child of God. And that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
And I never would have expected the feedback from that response in that room.
That was powerful. And just hearing the people talk about it later and come up to say something to you like, wow, I was thinking that in my head, but I wasn't brave enough to say it. Or I was thinking that in my head, but I was not one of the ones on stage. So to have you be, on the stage and answer that was a big deal. So I thought that was cool to hear about and follow up on.
Yeah, it's like whatever platform, to share Christ. And it was interesting because it was around the time of Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Oh.
It was right around that same period of time, and how many people it just opened up a lot of conversation that I didn't expect. Opened up a lot of good questions. It opened up relationships with people that I hadn't talked to before that came up to me. And it was so interesting because it was like putting God centered in our industry is what most people say they will do. But all I did was in that moment was obedient and said, hey, this is what God's telling me to say right now. Right. And I don't know how it's going to hit. I don't know how people in the room are going to take it. I don't care. I'm being obedient. Right.
And, on the same lines, when you're interviewing people on your podcast, you're doing the same thing. You're being obedient and having these people on and following through on all the questions that you have for them and just connecting with them, which is a huge thing here in the poultry world, is the connection, which kind of goes into my next question. I want to talk about the heart of this industry for a minute. Darn it, I'm going to cry again. This past year, between finishing my bachelor's in nursing and navigating my AFib, I was moved on how many people would reach out just to check on me or to congratulate me on finishing my degree. It really highlighted that the poultry community is so much more than just a professional network. When you see people in the industry showing up for each other like that, what does it tell you about the culture that we get to be a part of?
I choke up as well. So many professions are transactional. I'm in sales, and so I'm here to sell you a product, and I'm a buyer, and I'm here to buy a product, and keep that personal stuff at home. Even though we talk about the weather, we talk about family, but so many times it's so surface. And just being transparent with people in the industry as we're going through it, whether it's social media and other things, we're doing life together. The industry's ups and downs, if it affects the producer, it affects the vendors. If I'm having a bad day because my wife's having a bad day, then it affects all of us in some way. And so this industry is so special. The way they give back to each other, the way they, work towards a common goal of feeding the world. I mean, what better purpose in life besides sharing God is there than feeding the world, and how that has changed my world in so many ways of the work that's going on in Guatemala and the relationships I've built so I can trust the information that I'm then sharing with those in Guatemala. And so it's this amazing purpose that the industry has that just keeps motivating me to be better and to find a bigger purpose than just selling, making money, supporting my family, but also finding real relationships out there. It's been really, really amazing.
So you shared very small there about, I don't think you shared too much about that on your podcast. Can you elaborate on Guatemala, please?
Yes. In an act of obedience a year and a half ago, I raised my hand and went to Guatemala with a friend he was wanting to go. And I said, hey, I'm going to go with you, not having a clue of where that was going to lead. And as we got close to the trip, it turned into be a church-sponsored trip where we're going to go vet a ministry down there. And as we're going from the airport to the mission house, the pastor asked me, hey, aren't you in the chicken industry? And yeah. And then they go to share about their farm. And I'm thinking, okay, they got backyard birds, they got, all this. And then come to find out they had 4,000 chickens at the time. And I had no idea that I was going to Guatemala to connect with this ministry and this farm. And through that, I remembered the conversations about Egg a Day program that was brought to me by Bruce Doima right here on the podcast. And it just absolutely blew my mind that this ministry, which is feeding kids, wasn't taking advantage of these eggs that they were producing on their farm that helped pay the bills. And so just by sharing the information, connecting them with some other folks, they started just donating these eggs, boiling them and taking them up into the mountains for meals. And then I was able to go back on another mission trip this last summer and to see the effects of those eggs on those kids already, those families, and to deliver eggs from the chicken, actually deliver eggs from the farm myself up into the mountains. It was just absolutely so amazing. And then the connection, they've since grown, added another 2,000 birds. And so now those eggs, and what they need is they need another 2,000 more so they can feed the villages on a regular basis, because up in the mountains, they can't raise their own birds because they all get killed by the jaguars and other things that are up in the mountains that want to eat those birds because they don't have the buildings and the resources to maintain up in the mountains. And so just knowing that there's a piece of my heart in Guatemala where God called me in an act of obedience to follow, I followed, and now I'm just absolutely a new place that I can serve, that I get to share what everybody teaches me through this industry and just help this farm. It's just absolutely amazing. And then to see the growth of those kids, the communities, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. And just to hear about how, God's answering prayers here and there, and, hearing your stories when you come back, like this is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And just another awesome God moment, of course. Following back up on the culture of the poultry industry, as the industry grows and things get busier, how do you make sure that we don't lose the connections that we have in a world where everyone is so busy? What are the best ways that we can continue to see and hear each other for who we are as people? How do we continue to prioritize the real life connections that we have so that everyone can really feel seen and not just for the job they do?
It's interesting. I have found social media to be an amazing connection to the industry. Seems like I connect with a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, not for work purposes, but just to find out who they are when they're not at work. Mm-hmm. And it is so fun to see the kids in football and to see the different activities that people are involved in, because when I get to the opportunity to see them, it's like I have something that I can connect with right away. And as you experienced, many of the people that, followed our story is because of social media, where they connected with me through Facebook or through, an event. And then, through you tagging me, they get to see your stories, and then they become your friends, and the industry just continues to connect in that way, because we're more than just business associates. When we're at a business event, and sometimes it just feels like it's just a transactional event where sales have got to be done, we lose that opportunity to sit down and have real conversations about what's going on in life, because there's somebody right over my shoulder who's probably there to talk about the next deal or the next widget or next feed additive or whatever. And the customer is a customer at that moment and not a friend. And it's so hard, where I value in an industry that we're going through it together, whether through HPAI and all these things, that we're just there together. And so either giving them an opportunity to share their story on the podcast, which is valuable to both of us and the industry, or to, ask them to teach about something. It's amazing how people share of themselves in different ways. All they have to be is asked. So I ask for a lot of people to be my friend.
Right.
And I ask for a lot of people to be my connection because I value it.
And I think we're all kind of experts in our own different ways. Just asking someone to share what they're an expert in. It could be something really small or something that you feel is really small, but really that's something big for somebody else. And I love hearing stories, just of people who you just can't imagine as they've been a race car driver, and you haven't, you're a little old man. You were a race car driver. You were in the, race car driver Hall of Fame somewhere. So I think, everybody's got a little thing they're an expert in, that it's a little secret. They need to make it come out.
It's interesting you say that, because I go back to a project I did when I was a photographer called Just Because I Can't Remember Doesn't Mean I Want to Be Forgotten. And I think of the fire chief that was in that home and with his fire boots, couldn't even have a clue of what was going on. But I just remember his family remembers those days of him as a fire chief and just hearing that story. And he was to the point in dementia that he couldn't tell any stories. But when they were talking about him, he just lit right up. And he doesn't remember. He can't tell you a story anymore like any good fireman could. But man, they were telling stories and he just lit right up. And everybody has a story.
They do.
I didn't realize so long ago that was what I was, trying to tell that man's story, and all of those people in that home's, their story with just one picture. How does that one person have a story?
Yeah.
And to see today where it's about connection, it's about story.
It is, my patients, their families, I like to ask, who is she? Tell me what she did. Tell me who he was. And to hear them tell the story and then hear them say, thank you for asking. Because a lot of times it is the task-based nursing that we have, but hearing who these people are it's so much more. And I love to share that with the bedside team and say, did you know this person was a race car driver? Did you know he's a famous chef? They usually don't know. And I'm like, it's so cool. Connect with them. So I think that's cool that you have those connections with people in a kind of a different way, just connecting here and there.
I think everybody has a story. And I think as a leader, sometimes we take for granted, we put assumptions on the other person about their lives and their story. And we forget to stop and just pull that story out of them. Most people they don't realize they have a story. And sometimes it just takes someone to ask the right question to pull that story out of them. So where they feel not just connected, but also just valued in so many ways.
We talk a lot about industry growth. Let's talk about personal growth. What have you been doing over the past year, Brandon Mulnix, to become a better person? What are your goals for this next year? What kind of big things are up your sleeve?
This last season, I said it before, my word was obedience, and just following that has led to so much growth. Slowing down, processing, using AI to help me process things and ask me questions that I might not considered, because I love to move. I love to think fast. I love to solve problems fast. And so this last season, between obedience and just learning AI, was really been a lot of fun. Gave me a lot of confidence to jump in and, do more things. This next season for me comes back to continually challenging my mind to learn new technology, because I'm in a technology company that I want to continue to grow, but at the same time, look for ways to solve problems that might not include technology, because I've noticed that there's some really good ideas out there that can be implemented quickly, adapted to our industry, and they solve real problems. And they're simple things. Like, I used to remember as a paramedic, if I had an airway, like I had to go in and I was going to have to put a tube in someone's throat. I had an airway kit. I had all my tools there. Everything I could possibly need it. I checked it every day to make sure it was ready. And then where's that same tool in the poultry world where I've got to fix something? And so I've been working on a few ideas around that, as well as my big challenge this next year is on the physical side. I'm looking at training for a triathlon.
You're not just looking at training for one. You have signed up for one.
Yes, I've signed up for a triathlon in the spring, and I've been training really hard for that triathlon.
I'm really excited for it.
There was a little sarcasm there, just a little bit. Sometimes I get a little intense when I'm training. So
you spoke a little bit about AI, and in the poultry world, we have to specify this AI is not the kind that comes from birds. After my long-standing resistance to avoid AI at all costs, you showed me how it could actually save my sanity when I was finishing my bachelor's. Now, you're using it daily, and I hear pretty consistently things that you're doing with AI to make things easier. In your opinion, what has been the most revolutionary application of AI so far for your industry? And I have a follow-up question after that.
Well, I start off with the intention of AI for me is not to make everything go away, but it will free me up to be more human and do the things that I'm really good at. And so some of the best applications for me are self-evaluation.
Ooh.
So one, and I'm not going to take credit for this. It was actually fed by another guest I had on the show, Brian Fretwell, but he talked about taking your one-on-ones with your employees that you've got notes from and transcripts, and then feeding them into Note LM or something that's collective and asking it to evaluate you as a person. What are your trends? What do you do often? What shouldn't you be doing? Based on other leadership principles, what are you doing that you should stop doing? Because there's no better way to grow than to get self-assessment, and to have someone else listen to all of those recordings like a coach or something, and then listen and then evaluate you isn't probably going to be affordable or going to happen. But what I've learned through having those is I have a lot of tendencies that I need to make sure that I follow up with. And it's been a lot of growth is to evaluate myself more than even using it to evaluate team members. And so it really has been hugely helpful in that area.
Awesome. So looking ahead, how do we integrate this AI into the poultry industry to make us better without losing the human element of our jobs?
Well, I start by looking at those tasks that you do every day. That's data entry. That's could be used. There's a sensor out there that could do it, the same thing, and pick up that data and then process it. It's not about processing it and making a decision off it. That's ultimately the human. But it's putting that information in a way, for example, with flock reports. Our farmers have been using them for years, and they have this intuition, but are they able to pick up a 1 or 2% flock differentiation over the course of a month when maybe it's not typical? When they apply one growth curve to another growth curve of one flock, they might start to see things that they didn't know. And then you add in other things like, hey, this thunderstorm came by and we had a huge mortality. Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't pick that up before. Well, what about feed additives or changes? We made a change to something. How do we track that change? Well, it's really hard to catch those little differences. But with AI and all that data, it actually is quite useful. And so my encouragement to anybody is just let it help you start write an email as a draft. See how it does, see how it gets to know you, and then just start doing something. Doesn't matter the tool at this point, just get started. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, how do I take other things I'm doing in my daily life? Then ask it. Like if you're using Gemini, how do I automate this task that I'm doing? Help me critically think about it. What am I missing if I do it this way? What are the risks of doing it this way? If you have a question about it, ask it. And it's amazing how many times it will help you process through, because at first it thinks you're a hero. It's very positive. You can't do anything wrong. But then you train it to say, hey, I want to critically think about these things and not just blow smoke up my rear end about them. And so it's important that you ask the questions and then just don't stop at one. Go 3 or 4 deep, and you'll be surprised how much faster it processes information and ideas. I'll sit in a tree stand and just talk with Gemini on my phone and just process an idea. Okay, what's next on this idea? Okay, what's next on this idea? Okay, create a step-by-step plan to make this happen. And then, oh, by the way, set a reminder tomorrow to review this, because I'm probably going to forget about the idea by tomorrow.
So AI is not just for glittery Christmas pictures?
Oh, there's some amazing pictures that you can do with it. I mean, I think today the trend is, what your job is and show,
little caricature things.
Yes, little caricature things. Yes.
Yeah. But you did use it for our closet.
I did.
And subsequently I used it for what paint colors that I should pick. So although I still don't love it very much. It does make things easier for somebody who needs to see them, but it also helps a little bit here and there for like, how do I draft this? Especially for college papers that were never ending.
I mean, today, the last thing I did before you got here was looking over warranty terms. And if I made this specific change, how would I have to redraft this document if I want to make this change? Because and I'm not going to get specific into the change, but if I change this one factor, what else do I have to change in the document? And it's easier to go to a legal counsel with the changes already made and have them approve it than it is for them to create it.
Smart. So bringing the whole podcast full circle, because I know it's a little long, back to what matters the most, which is family and those who we impact on a daily basis. I asked the kids if they would provide me questions to ask you. So Lily wants to know, who is your favorite child and why is it her?
The child who looks like me wants to know why she's my favorite child. Well, she can be my favorite child when Silas isn't around. And she did move out first. So she becomes my favorite child.
She's my favorite oldest daughter. She's my favorite daughter. She's my favorite oldest child. Silas wants to know, what makes you lock in and get out of bed every morning to do your job besides the paycheck? Basically like, what's your why, cuh?
That is totally him. Well, see, he always asks the business questions. Work is one of those things that I have found that my faith, my work, and a lot of things bring me energy. And so when I get up in the morning at 4:00 to go to the gym, to go work out, and then I'm fighting at the gym to stay there because I want to get to work. And it's so rare to find a job or any type of work you're that passionate about. And a lot of it has to do with just the fact that I get to be part of this industry, help people solve problems. I have a great team here, a lot of fun people to be around every day. I mean, and then I get to live out my faith at work through what I do. And that's a really good reason to go to work. I have a purpose. I mean, Jesus was a carpenter. Peter was a fisherman. they got purpose through their work. And so for me, there's no separation from that because, I mean, even when I'm at church, there's things I learn at work that I share from work into church to help organize things and to lead there. And you don't have to compartmentalize it.
I love that. He also said not to ask anything personal because guys don't like to talk about personal things. So There's that. That's what he said.
Wow.
So hopefully I didn't get too personal in this.
No.
But thanks for having me back. I hope I did well.
Well, I appreciate you being a great host. And I'm sure the Poultry Leadership Podcast audience is going to appreciate this and connect even more with you because just because you are my wife, you are still part of the poultry industry. You go to events, you go to the dinners, and for some reason, every time I have to travel for work, I hear I'm available for that week. Yes, that is what I hear. And it's not just because she goes and sits in the hotel the whole week. She absolutely likes to come to events, get to know people, learn crazy stories about people because you think I'm great at interviewing people. This lady has the most amazing job in the world where she gets to capture people's stories at the end of their life when everything else is going crumbling around the family. She's the calm in the storm. And so I'm blessed to have her as my always co-host at home. Once a season on the podcast.
I get a once a season slot.
Well, I mean, you are the only one who's come back for more.
There'll be more.
So listeners, as I wrap this show up, I do want to thank you for letting me get started into season 3, sharing your feedback this year, sharing what this podcast means to you. Because of that, those stories is why I continue to do this podcast. If I didn't think that there was any value after 2 years, I would have quit. But I keep coming back because of you. And so please, I need more of you out there. I know there's more listeners available. I appreciate more stories. So if you have any interest of being on the podcast, please reach out to me. I'd love to share more farm stories. And there are so many quiet and private farms that I'd love to be able to just share their story. So please reach out to me. And as always, this podcast wouldn't be possible without Prism Controls. And they have been a great sponsor of this show. It's going to continue for this season as Prism Controls, and I appreciate that. And so thank you, and have a great night.